Welcome to IMC Charlotte. Guys, we're having our snow evening together. Everybody in the comfort of their home after likely having a different kind of day, either not going to work or working remotely. Um, we woke up with kids ringing the doorbell and bringing us snow muffins that they in muffin tins. So that was really sweet. The kids were super excited in the neighborhood, and we got a dusting of snow. It was beautiful. So nice day today. Tonight, I'd like to talk to us about standing strong in the storms. And we've kind of had a stormy year in a lot of ways. Um, and I want to talk about also exploring activism through the lens of the Dharma. And so I was inspired by an article that I read entitled Large Trees, Deep Roots. And this was on the Buddhist Global Network. And it was written by Sensei Alex Kekoyu. And he's a former Marine who served in Iran and Afghanistan. And now he's a Buddhist teacher. So his article was Large Trees, Deep Roots. And that's what inspired this whole talk tonight. So I was thinking about the fact that it's not uncommon for us here where we live off of Sardis Road. This area seems to be hit by high winds and storms a lot. If a storm rolls through, it's almost guaranteed that our neighborhood will lose power. And there's no tall buildings nearby. There's large yards. And the rolling hills seem to just regularly invite this delightful windiness. So normally that's nice, especially in the summer with breezes. But lately, our little yard with lots of big old trees has been pretty dramatic. More than once, we have to race out onto the deck and grab the umbrella as it lifts and tilts towards the neighbor's house because of the high winds and the way that they come up underneath our back deck. All of our bird houses have to be battened down extra with wire and extra hooks, or they just blow right out of the trees. On the days when the wind is really strong, I like to make a cup of tea and just sit in front of one of the big windows and watch the big trees swaying and moving, their arms in the air. It's really beautiful. And I also imagine at that time their roots and how strong the roots are. The roots, I'm told, are as big as the canopy, the branches in the tree, that the roots are like a mirror in the ground of those branches. Because I sure don't want them falling on the house. The understory trees, the little trees that we planted when we moved in, they have a tougher time. I've seen them bend so hard during a storm that I was sure they would snap, and yet somehow they don't. Many of the saplings, however, seem to be growing a little bit sideways from all of the wind that we get here and the herds of deer that come through and chew on them and push on them in the night. So the larger and older trees fare better during the storms. They may lose a few leaves, and we may get a few gray hairs during those heavy storms because we can hear branches coming down. But it's really rare for a large, healthy tree to be pulled down. More often, there's just pointing, gesticulating, hand wringing, much discussion, but everybody's still standing when the storm is over. Science tells us that trees are intertwined under the surface of the soil with a networking system that's very much like our brain. The roots not only join together, but they have filaments and they have ways of messaging each other under the soil to have a kind of a communication network that also serves um, to implement a sort of immune system for them. And even some trees can even alert each other to danger. So, again, very much as we as humans are when we're in a healthy community. The reason these larger, older trees fare better than their younger counterparts is because they have these deep roots that are able to grip down into the nourishment of the soil and connect into a network that provides stability and anchors them into the earth. This is why, when a group of trees is living together and all but one tree is cut down, within a year or two of losing its friends, the last tree often will die. It's been deprived of community, its immune system is now compromised, and it's much more likely now to be struck by lightning, which is exactly what happened to the old oak tree next door when the neighbors decided to put a swimming pool in and cut down all the trees so they could get more sun in their backyard. That old oak just died this year. So, developing strong roots and sturdy trunks does two things for us and for the trees. It enables us to weather the storms of life, and it helps us heal more quickly when we do get knocked down or damaged. Our extensive root networks are the Dharma and the Sangha, our KM groups, our book groups, our potlucks, the social time that we spend together. These are the communities that give us the opportunities to absorb encouragement, to laugh together, to lament together when we need to do that. These are the nutrients from the soil of a connected community. We need this in order to repair, to make it through tough times, and to regain health and strength when we feel like we're flagging. Out of deep insight and compassion, the Buddha gave so many lessons on various forms of suffering that he guaranteed we would experience. He talked about being born as a guarantee for suffering. He talked about aging and becoming ill. We're all familiar with that, about getting things that we do not want in our life and losing things that we do want in life. We gain enemies, we lose friends. Ultimately, we pass from the earth. He simply encouraged us to keep looking carefully at the mind at all times, noticing how we respond to life, and to learn how our minds naturally want to push away what we perceive as pain or harmful. Like the trees in the forest, we'll either stand or fall according to how well we get to know our minds and how resilient we become. One day, we'll draw a final breath and we'll look back, maybe at this time, at this current rough patch, and remember the vehemently divided political scene in our country, that wars are being fought, even now as we meet right now tonight, and the freakish climate disasters and strange new viruses that are appearing all the time. John and I just had family that had to evacuate from Los Angeles with their dogs and their child, and they've just returned yesterday to a city that is in ashes. Very, very sad. Their house didn't burn down, thank goodness. But notice if simply hearing this list of things that can concern us causes a contraction. It does in me. It's no matter how slight it is, if we can just notice how the mind and the body responds to the things that are problems in the world, it can help us soften around it and kind of befriend it. And Maybe send a little metta every time that happens. It's one of the most important things we can do is just be with it. So each of us makes a decision about how we cope with these difficulties in life. We're bearing witness, so to speak. Sometimes not thinking about any of this is also a decision. Some days or some weeks, this might be the wise decision for our own well being. We do have permission to rest. We do not have to fix everything that is broken or make everyone happy. Each day, it's more important to take time to explore and examine our own minds, our own bodies, and it's vital to continue to replenish in this way. So let's follow the example of trees. Let's thicken our trunks by respecting our relationships. This is how we get stronger and stronger. Let's spread our roots deep into our own heart's soil, taking time to feel into simple joys like the snow muffins that were on the front porch this morning, and being brave enough to include feeling our anxiety and our fear without getting swept away in it. When we're tempted to distract ourselves and put our energies elsewhere, for me, that's often on social media, we can set a timer. It's so easy to get lost in Instagram, or I can plant myself in a comfortable chair with a phone or a laptop. Fortunately, the timer goes off, or something wholesome inside of me taps me on the shoulder and whispers, "That's probably enough, honey." I don't enjoy being tossed about. I don't like lurching between emotions like anger, blame, and fear. I want the psychological reserves that'll be necessary to weather more storms and, if necessary, to rebuild my life. I suspect you don't enjoy being worried or afraid or angry either. Laurie Anderson, a Buddhist practitioner and a well known musician, says, "We must learn how to feel sad without being sad." And so you could pretty much put any emotion in there. We can feel it and acknowledge it and let it pass through. We don't have to be stuck in it. We don't have to be mired in it. I think about that a lot. So even though we're people of all ages and backgrounds here, if we're not consistently practicing being present and having real friends and learning wholesome discernment, like what was taught at the day-long retreat last Saturday, we could end up like young saplings littering the road after the next strong thunderstorm. As students of the Buddhist teachings, we're advised to be vigilant, not dwell on negativity, and not worry, but also not bury our heads in the sand. So each of us is trying to find our own middle way, keeping our eye on the stormy winds, not out of a sense of fear or paranoia, but practicing skillful view and wise intention and wise effort, all from the core teachings in the Buddha's Noble Eightfold Path. So we want to see reality clearly, not through the lens of emotion. We want to be unclouded by our preferences or any misperceptions or fake news so that we can respond appropriately if that's what's called for. Seeing clearly is the direct translation of the word vipassana, which is the Burmese equivalent to insight meditation. They are, in essence, the same thing in different cultures. So seeing clearly is the whole point. Remaining in the present moment is advised to all else, above all else, and is an interesting kind of a misnomer because remaining implies stillness, but our life moments change, change, change constantly until we die. Since the present moment is considered so important to our practice, I want to take a quick look at the roots of that phrase. The Latin root word for present is presenti, And it's a noun and a verb. And it means, this is so interesting, being true, being immediate, being current, or being effective. It can also mean to mind the senses. We can easily extrapolate being present and true with or through the senses, or being sensible. The root word for moment is interesting as well. It came into the English language from the Latin movimentum, and it is a verb that means to move. So the word moment was a verb. So it means the movement of time. They come from this same root word, movimentum. So each moment is known as a movement of time. So we could say that present moment means being immediate or current with the senses through the movements of time. Viewed in this way, we can more easily see current events as a stream of phenomena, constantly changing, changing, changing. Even the word current points to this flow. Being available and open to the present moment as it is our practice. We accept things, hopefully with some degree of equanimity. From this clear seeing, we can know when and how to act and when to refrain from action. Pema Chodron says in her book, The Places That Scare You, that we need to emphasize the ability to be open and to accept things without discrimination. This is not an easy thing to do. Training in equanimity is learning to open the door to all and welcome all beings, invite life to come and visit. Of course, when certain guests arrive, we feel fear or aversion. We might open the door just a crack. If that's all we can presently do, then we can allow ourselves to shut the door if necessary. And so cultivating equanimity is just another work in progress. We aspire to spend our lives training in the loving kindness and the courage that it takes to receive whatever appears on the horizon, welcoming and getting to know them all. This is basically understanding suffering. So we've been talking about important questions the past couple of weeks. And a question now becomes, who am I in this stream of current events, this stream of change? Remember that everything inside all of us is changing all the time. The cells in the leaves on the plants, the cells in our own stomachs, the skin is always sloughing off, the cells in our lungs are changing out, our food and our breath are constantly moving in and out of our bodies. All of life is predicated upon this kind of healthy change, known as anicca, one of the three characteristics of our very existence. So I don't know about you, but I find it so comforting to think about how much change there is when I feel agitated or worried. It really feels good to know that things will change no matter what. We might easily wish for this stream, these changes to move even a little more quickly, in essence, to be over. But you've probably heard the term, you can't push the river. And so we dwell each day unfolding another set of circumstances that we may or may not like. This is our precious human life. We've been talking about the benefit of asking skillful questions, and I'd like to ask a few more questions and not offer any answers. How do we nurture our hearts in times of distress or concern? What are we simply self-soothing? And is there anything wrong with self-soothing? What are some appropriate actions if and when we feel that we have to take action? This brings me to teachers like Bhikkhu Bodhi, Thich Nhat Hanh, Martin Luther King, whose remembrance holiday we just celebrated. All are powerful and peaceful activists who also honor their respective spiritual traditions. Tay, or teacher, as Thich Nhat Hanh's students called him, saw his beloved Vietnam invaded, pillaged, and raped. Many, many people slaughtered as a bloody war raged for decades. His peaceful resistance and activism resulted in his exile for 39 years as he relentlessly called for an end to war. And as he died not too long ago, he was allowed to return to his country and die in the temple where he took his vows from his first teacher as a young boy. When that war came to Vietnam, monks and nuns were confronted with the problem of whether to adhere to the contemplative life that they had promised, to stay meditating in the monastery, or to leave and help those around them that were suffering, which was essentially breaking the rules at that time. Thich Nhat Hanh is one of the few who chose to do both. And in doing so, he founded what's called now engaged Buddhism. And he coined the term in his book, Vietnam, Lotus in a Sea of Fire. He said, our own life has to be our message. Meditation is not to escape from society, but to come back to ourselves and to see clearly what is going on. Once there is clear seeing, there must be acting. With mindfulness, we will know what to do and what not to do to help. In this spirit, he was the one that led the Buddhist delegation to the Paris peace talks in 1969. So under his leadership, Plum Village grew from a small rural farmstead to what is now one of the world's largest and most active Buddhist monasteries, with over 200 resident monastics and over 10,000 visitors every year coming from all around the world to learn the art of mindful living. This is beginning to sound like an advertisement for Plum Village, but really, it's simply an example of how successfully the grimy seeds of despair and destruction can be sown into the fertile soil of an open and aching heart, and what immense good can take root and grow from that bloody circumstance. Just in the last 20 years, over 100,000 people have made a commitment to follow Thich Nhat Hanh's code of universal global ethics. They're known as the 5 mindfulness trainings, and they are based on the Buddha's 5 precepts, have been adapted to our modern life. His legacy of engaged Buddhism is continued now by a community of over 700 monastic disciples. He has 11 monasteries and hundreds of lay Dharma teachers, and at least one of them lives here in Charlotte, North Carolina, and has spoken at our Sangha, David Viafora. Tay left hundreds of thousands of followers worldwide, and all of this is because he kept at it until he found a way to be at home in the world, despite living through extremely distressing circumstances. Sharon Salzberg writes in Loving Kindness, The Revolutionary Art of Happiness, in 6 months, in 1 day, or even in 1 hour, we can experience so many extremes of pleasure and pain. Her question is, how can a human heart, my heart, your heart, absorb the continual, unremitting contrast in this life without feeling shattered and thinking that maybe we cannot bear it? Can we actually be happy with all this continuous arising and passing away? And almost in answer to that, Thich Nhat Hanh wrote, I am a continuation, like the rain is a continuation of a cloud. A cloud actually never dies. So following the example of ancient forest trees, we gain resiliency by studying these teachers' wise ways that are directly inspired by Buddhist scriptures. We grow, we extend our roots by sitting in meditation together and on our own. We perform kind actions in our neighborhoods and with those we don't know, and we patiently tend to our relationships. And in the moments when we're injured by the challenges of life, we ask for help and receive the support of our community. The choice is clear. We can moan and howl and cry in the hope that stormy winds will not blow again, or we can move through life with new curiosity each day while preparing ourselves for storms that are inevitably going to return. In this way, the teachings propose that we practice a sort of positive pessimism, kind of like the Stoics did. On good days when the sky is clear and the air is warm, we stretch our branches towards the sun, we soak in the light, we rejoice in the beauty of the world and build strength. And on the very same day, we shore up in our hearts preparation for the day when the sun doesn't shine, when the air is sharp and the news is bad, never closing our hearts off from the aliveness and the wildness of the present moment. May we never close our hearts off from the aliveness and the wildness of this present moment. Thank you so much for listening tonight.